Everybody, and welcome to tonight's council meeting, and those people in the gallery that are braving the very crisp. The speaker's not on. Can we just have I can hear the speakers on, but maybe they're not on at the back. We'll just get Chelsea to check. Okay, thank you. Is that better? Yep, beautiful. Thank you. So look, thank you very much to those people in the gallery that have braved the cold weather to come tonight. It's one of those wonderful crisp winter evenings, and I really appreciate it after being on leave for the last few weeks where it's been very hot and humid. So it's nice to come back to Victor Harbour. And nice to feel refreshed and full of energy again after a break. And thank you to those people that are tuned in from home. So before we get started, I would like to ask those people who are able to stand for acknowledgement of country, diversity commitment, service acknowledgement, and the prayer. The City of Victor Harbour acknowledges the Ramangeri and the Narrandjeri people, the traditional custodians of the land and surrounding waters where we live and work. We acknowledge their deep connection to country, and we pay our respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. This respect is extended to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across Australia. Would someone like to read the diversity commitment? Thank you, Angela.
The City of Victor Harbour is committed to diversity, equity and inclusion. We respect people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities, beliefs, cultures and backgrounds.
And the service acknowledgement, Councillor Burns?
We recognise the brave individuals who have served and continue to serve our nation. We remember those who lost their lives and paid the ultimate sacrifice to our country.
Thank you. And the prayer. Thank you, Councillor Schofield.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless this council and allow it to be an agent of change for the people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the honouring of your name and the welfare of the people whom it serves. Amen.
Thank you very much. For those people in the gallery and are watching at home, I'll just introduce the councillors and staff that we have here. So Councillor Mann and Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Burns and Councillor Kemp, Councillor Schiller, who is also our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. I haven't had any apologies tonight, and I know that Councillor Quinton is often running a few minutes late because of work commitments and puppies being born at inconvenient times. So he'll be with us as soon as he can. We have staff that are here tonight. We have Emma and Chelsea, and then we have Director Karen Rokoczynski. We have Director Jodie Roberts, Director Graham Pathouse, and Finance Director Kelly Knight-Stacey here for those people who don't know them. So thank you all very much for helping this meeting run smoothly. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Schiller for acting as Mayor over the last 5 weeks while I've been away. From what I hear, she's done a superb job, and I very much appreciate her stepping in to conduct all sorts of things, Australia Day ceremony, citizenship ceremonies, speaking on behalf of Victor Harbour, hosting council meetings and the rest. So thank you very much, Angela, for stepping in for me. If we move to item point 4.1, we do have 2 items adjourned that are lying on the table. And the first one is related to the public interest disclosure policy and procedure, which has been reviewed. And the current motion before council Revokes the public interest disclosure policy as provided at attachment A1 and adopts the reviewed public interest disclosure policy as provided at attachment 2. This was debated and was now brought back to council. That was moved by Councillor Mann and seconded by Councillor Henderson. But because it was at the June meeting, I'm happy for both of them to speak to it again. Councillor Mann, did you want to speak to this?
Just to say I'm happy with the current proposal of amendments.
Happy with the current proposal, thank you. The microphones may not be working as well tonight. If you can remember to speak really directly into them so that everyone can hear. And Councillor Henderson, did you want to speak to it? No, thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, hopefully it's not too loud. During the previous council meeting, I proposed a number of amendments aimed at strengthening the procedure. In summary, those amendments sought to improve clarity around reporting pathways, strengthening protections and oversight, and ensuring greater transparency and accountability in how disclosures are managed. Whilst I acknowledge the work undertaken by administration, those proposed amendments have not been incorporated into the version before us tonight. And I understand administration's comments where they disagree with my amendments, but in my view, these types of safeguards are fundamental to ensuring that both staff and the community have a confidence in the integrity of the disclosure process. For that reason, I'm unable to support the public interest policy in its current form. However, I note that this is a policy area that can be revisited, and I would encourage a future council to review and strengthen these provisions to ensure they reflect best practice and community expectations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. I note that you were the only one that put in any ongoing amendments in relation to that, but the other elected members found that there wasn't any needed amendments to that. Does anybody else want to speak to this? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to 4.2, which is another adjourned item. And the current motion for council that was moved by Councillor Mann and seconded by Councillor Henderson is that council adopt the reviewed Prudential management policy as provided at attachment 2. Councillor Mann, did you want to speak to that? Councillor Henderson? No. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned with the previous policy last meeting, I proposed a number of amendments aimed at strengthening the policy, particularly in relation to financial safeguards, risk assessment, and ensuring a more robust due diligence for major projects. And whilst, again, I acknowledge the large amount of work undertaken by administration in preparing the amendments for this policy, those proposed safeguards haven't been incorporated into the version before us tonight. And given the importance of prudential oversight in guiding significant financial decisions of council, I believe it's essential that the policy gets a strong and comprehensive framework from the outset. For that reason, I'm unable to support the policy in its current form. And again, I just make a point that I would encourage a future council to review and strengthen it to ensure it reflects best practice in prudential governance and provides the highest level of assurance to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. And once again, acknowledge that you wanted to have some changes, but certainly the Audit and Risk Committee, including the independent professionals on that committee, found that the policy covered everything sufficiently and none of the other elected members had any issues with it at all. Does anybody else want to speak? No, I'll take that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to minutes of the previous meeting, being Monday the 25th of May. Would someone like to move that those minutes are confirmed as true and accurate? Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and seconding Councillor Henderson. Does anyone have any questions about those minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 5.2, minutes of the previous meeting, the special council meeting on the 1st of June, that those minutes are confirmed as true and accurate. Moved by Councillor Schiller, seconded by Councillor Mann. Does anybody have any questions in relation to those minutes? All those in favour of those minutes? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to deputations, and we've got 2 deputations tonight. We have had 1 deputation that was refused, and I'd like to thank the Fleurieu Marine Education at the South Australian Whales Centre for asking for a deputation. But the reason that their deputation was actually refused was due to probity concerns relating to the timing of the request, as we've got an upcoming expression of interest process for the further delivery of the education programs at the South Australian Whales Centre. So to ensure fairness and integrity for all parties and avoid any perception of advantage to them, I refused their deputation tonight. We do have a welcome, Councillor Quinton. I did say that you were probably delivering puppies. Thank you for joining us. We do have a deputation from Mr. Keith Climpson, who has some ideas for Victor Harbour facility improvements. Mr. Climpson, please come up and make your deputation. You do have 10 minutes, as you're aware, and that 10 minutes includes questions from any elected members. And can you please speak directly into the microphone so that we can hear you?
Right, thanks very much for letting me present this deputation. Actually, the title was How to Improve Facilities for Visitors and Tourists to Victor Harbour. There's a few topics I'd like to talk about. The first is the dog park, which I made a deputation about, if you remember, and you said you'd get it costed. But when I went to the Basketball Association meeting, Victoria said there were no plans to build a second dog park. So I'd like really if you can clarify if you are going to do costings for the dog park, and I believe Councillor Quinton agreed it was a good idea. We had a second dog park. So are you able to tell me?
I can certainly get that clarified for you. This is a time for a deputation for you to tell us about what you want, rather than question answer session.
Okay.
But I'll get that clarified for you.
Certainly, I would like a second dog park built. It would be very beneficial for tourists and visitors, and we're getting a lot of visitors now in Victor Harbour. And I suppose in recognition of any input you can give, I would suggest that we could call it the Mayor Moira Jenkins Dog Park as a tribute to your input. Now, talking about dogs, dog park and dog facilities, I think basically Victor Harbour does a pretty poor job in looking after dog owners. Before we came here, we lived in a place called Cowra in New South Wales. We weren't paying annual licence fees for your dog. You paid a one-off fee and your dog was licensed for life. And I think it was about $30. So I think we need to spend a little bit of time looking about what's going on with dog ownership. And as the majority of people in Victor Harbour are elderly, and a lot of them, their only companionship is dogs, I really think we need to concentrate heavily on looking after them instead of spending millions of dollars on precincts, which are going to affect a few young people. So in terms of dog ownership, think about a one-off fee for life to reduce costs for elderly people. Right, next would be the horse tram. Well, I've been following the horse tram. If you remember, you wouldn't let me give a deputation about the horse tram, but now is my opportunity. And I've been looking at the times it runs, the tram, and it's just abysmal, just totally abysmal. I think it's costing us about $2,000 a day to run this tram. Yet today you have three tram services. 3. That's today. I've made a note of a few other times. On Wednesday, the 10th of June, it was a nice day. The first tram set off at 11:15, completely empty. You might say, well, why would it be completely empty? Well, they were just doing a training run. There are a lot of people hanging around waiting to get on the tram at 10:30. It sets off at 11:15, stone, without any passengers whatsoever. And by the time I saw the actual first load of passengers get off at Granite Island, because I like to go over there every day and I watch what goes on with the tram, there are a few passengers on, but most of them are just cleared off. So there's 2 things wrong there, is the total unreliability of the service, the very poor scheduling, and it's just abysmal. And we should, as a council, and I certainly myself as a ratepayer, would like to see it much better organised. One little suggestion I have is get the tram authority to keep a daily log of how many trips they do over. If there's only 3, well, let's have an explanation. If there's 4, bit better, but that still means that the last tram goes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's have a little bit of accountability into what goes on with the tram service. Next point, which I know you're probably bored stiff with me talking about seaweed removal on the beach. Well, I've always been told it's to improve biodiversity. Well, biodiversity includes a lot of things. It even includes human beings. It includes dogs. So dogs sniffing around on a lot of seaweed, dead seaweed, decaying seaweed, which is giving off hydrogen sulfide, isn't the best thing for a dog. I feel quite bitter about this because we lost one of our dogs, and I'm sure it was because he was sniffing seaweed and he got cancer in the nose and we lost him. So I feel quite bitter about that. I considered what other places in the world have lovely beaches, places I've been to, and I knew they were beautiful beaches. First would be Barbados. And it says, looking on the artificial intelligence, yes, sargassum seaweed is actively removed from beaches on Barbados. The island clears millions of pounds of seaweed annually, with clean-up efforts managed by local authorities and community groups. I'd like to see Victor Harbour start tidying up the beach. Certainly, if I had a nice house right opposite the beach in Victor Harbour, I'd love to see the seaweed removed, because it must be awful if you want to go down and have a quick swim in the morning before you go off to work and you've got to plough through a lot of seaweed. Would you agree, Mr. Quinton? No worries. Anyway, that's Barbados. And I've been to these places. The next place I looked at was Hawaii. And they said, yes, seaweed, locally known as limu, is removed from Hawaii's beaches, particularly when invasive algae overgrow or large piles accumulate and decompose, causing foul odours and attracting flies. Here we call it biodiversity. I just call it foul odours and attracting flies. However, clean-up efforts are strategic, balanced in resort aesthetics with environmental conservation. So there are places I would leave a little bit of seaweed, but where we have active people walking along the beach, dog owners, why not just get rid of the seaweed? Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is dog park. Talked about that. Horse tram, I've talked about that. Seaweed removal, I've talked about that. Last topic, council language. Now, we always talk about accountability and transparency. I think there's very little accountability and transparency in Victor Harbour Council. Very little. So I'd like to see other words included, like integrity, honesty, or truthfulness, helpfulness, compassion, openness, and willing to help. These would be lovely attributes, but they just don't seem to exist. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Climpson. A couple of responses. Well, the first one, in terms of the dog and cat park, the dog and cat the dog park, we are proposing a dog and cat management plan, which is being presented to the July council meeting, and whether or not we need another dog park will actually be part of that plan. So that is being progressed. I've just Karen Rokoczynski has let me know. The other thing is, in terms of dog and cat management and costs, the Dog and Cat Management Board, which are a government board, they actually look after the dog and cat management licensing, not council. So the dog, it's what do they call it? No, the board, DACO, Dog and Cat Management Committee. They look after it. So when you go to relicense your dog each year, you actually go through DACO and they do the licenses, or you can come to council and they will do the license for you if you have difficulty doing that. So that's not a council controlled matter, it's a state government controlled matter. So
any council in South Australia?
Every council in South Australia does it.
Okay, same cost?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Climpson? Councillor Burns.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in, and it's always helpful to get feedback from the community as to areas of concern that we can look at as a council. So I appreciate your coming in.
Okay, thanks very much, Stuart.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Climpson. The second deputation that we have tonight is from Greg Powell, and Greg is looking at financial sustainability and ECOSA. Thanks, Greg. If you'd like to come up, perhaps Councillor Kemp can show you how to turn the microphone on. If you're not aware, push the button.
There we go.
It. And if you can speak really clearly into it, then we can all hear you.
Okay, thank you.
So you have, again, Mr. Powell, 10 minutes, and that includes question time.
Okay. Mayor, councillors and staff, thank you for the opportunity to address council this evening. I appear before you as a concerned ratepayer seeking clarification on a number of matters arising from the Essential Services Commission of South Australia's financial sustainability advice provided to the City of Victor Harbor in February 24. The ESCOSTA report is not a political document. It is an independent assessment of Council's financial sustainability, affordability, risks and long-term financial planning. My purpose tonight is not to criticise Council, but to ask what actions have been taken in response to the concerns identified by ESCOSTA and whether those concerns remain relevant today. One of the most significant observations made by ESCOSTA was the Council's future financial position is heavily reliant upon growth assumptions. ESCOSTA noted the Council is forecasting rateable property growth of approximately 0.09% per annum over the 10 years to 2032-33. Compared with historical growth of approximately 0.04% per annum over the previous 10 years, it's, in simple terms, future growth is projected at more than double the historic rate. ESCOSTA observed that achieving this level of growth may prove challenging in the current construction environment. My question is whether these growth assumptions remain realistic today and what contingency plans Council has in place if they are not achieved. ESCOSTA has also warned that if forecast growth does not occur, existing ratepayers may be required to carry a greater share of the costs associated with major projects and future liabilities. This is important because growth projections are not simply numbers in a spreadsheet. They directly affect future rates, debt levels and financial sustainability. A second concern relates to inflation and cost assumptions. ESCOSTA noted that Council's long-term financial planning assumes inflation returning to 2.5% annually over the long term. ESCOSTA considered that reasonable at the time based on Reserve Bank forecasts. However, as ratepayers, we have experienced several years of significant inflationary pressures affecting construction, insurance, energy and labour costs. I believe it is reasonable to ask whether the assumptions used in previous financial models remain valid in today's economic environment. Ascosa also identified the Council's historic costs have increased at significantly higher rates than inflation and warned that in historical cost growth continues, councils may need to increase rates further in order to maintain operating surpluses. That brings me to affordability. ECOSCA identifies affordability risks as a key issue and highlight projected rate revenue growth above inflation. Ratepayers have experienced substantial rate increases in recent years, and many households are facing increasing financial pressures. I believe the community deserves to understand how future borrowing commitments, major projects, and long-term financial assumptions may affect future rates. Ascosa further noted that Council was proposing an additional rate rise component associated with the Regional Community Centre or Sports and Recreation Centre, driven by increased borrowings and maintenance costs. Ascosa also observed that ongoing costs would continue after construction was completed. Importantly, Ascosa recommended that Council consider reviewing the timing, scale and need of both the Precinct and the proposed Arts Centre. My question is simple. What actions has Council taken since receiving Ascosa's advice in February 2024 to address the risks identified by the Commission? Has Council reviewed the growth assumptions? Has Council reviewed the affordability implications to ratepayers? Has Council undertaken further sensitive testing of inflation, borrowing costs and projected risks? And has Council formally considered Ascosa's recommendation regarding the timing, scale and need of these major projects? Mayor and councillors, my concern is not whether Victor Harbour should continue to grow and invest in community facilities, but it's a matter of timing. My concern is whether those decisions are based on assumptions that remain realistic from 2024, affordable and sustainable for the people who will ultimately pay for them. Thank you for your time and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Powell, for your deputation. And I think, you know, the Ascosa report raised a number of issues which Council have looked at carefully. Certainly, we have put the Arts and Culture Precinct, pushed that back in the long-term financial plan because we realise that that cannot be done at the same time as the Sport and Recreation Precinct. That we have. The other questions that you have, I'm sure that we're happy to give you an answer in writing in relation to those questions. And I know that Council have been doing a lot of work. We've been looking at the state government's GARP, Great Adelaide Plan. And through that, we've got our own urban growth management plan. We're also doing a lot of work in our Future Ready strategy to address some of the issues that you've brought up. So Council are very aware of the concerns that you have and other ratepayers have, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. We have a question from Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Powell, for coming and presenting tonight. Just one aspect of what you've discussed is around that rate or the growth and that forecast and your concern about that 0.9. Just a few quick questions to Group Manager, Governance and Finance. What are we budgeting or what's the Valuer General saying our growth for the next financial year to be?
Through the Mayor, so it's 1.1% at the moment. That's come straight from the Valuer General's reports.
Thank you. Second quick question is, does that growth or that figure include the growth within retirement villages where they're not subdividing, simply more properties are being built on one piece of land?
Through the Mayor, no, it wouldn't. They would be regarded as one property.
Thank you. So in terms of that question you've raised, the 0.9 forecast is probably less than what we're expecting for the growth. And that growth forecast also isn't incorporating any of the growth we're having with the retirement villages as well, because the way the state government require us to assess and calculate our rateable, the rateable growth and also the rate increase everyone has, it doesn't include that growth that retirement villages have, because it's just one land. It's not being subdivided, so there's not that growth there. So that's probably just one aspect.
Yes, knowing that you've got another question, and when 10 minutes is up, 10 minutes is up.
I'll be very quick. I've spent a lot of time within the council talking to people, hundreds of people over the last 6 months. Their main concerns are rates, debt, infrastructure. Now, I don't know how Victor Harbor is going to grow at that sort of rate, right, with the problems we have with infrastructure that are long term. I mean, people complaining about water quality, water supply, water pressure. It's going to be very, very difficult to achieve rate growth like that.
Thank you. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, and thank you for coming in. I had a look at your deputation, and I actually had several questions, but I don't know if I'll have time to ask them all, but I'll try. You touched on changing economic conditions. What assumptions do you think councils should be revisiting right now? And you touched on you raised affordability. What kind of impacts are you hearing from other ratepayers? And are there specific actions or reporting you'd like to see made public to give the community more confidence that council is addressing the ASCOSA findings? So if you just start with those three. If we have time, I've got a couple others.
Right. As I said before, look, talking to ratepayers, their main concerns are rates, the increase in rates. We've had, 5.9% increases over the last 4 years, and it doesn't look like they're going to come down. Debt, they're worried about council debt.
Mm-hmm.
Cost of living pressures and services.
Okay.
As far as I think, as far as the proposal with major infrastructure projects, I think we've got to go back to the community because a lot of it is now out of date, and Australia as a nation is actually
You
going
have 1
backwards.
minute left.
Sorry. Interest rates, inflation, country debt is going this way. The rest of the world seems to be going back the other way. So it's very worrying.
And in regard to the last question, was there any reports or anything you'd like to be made public that would give you and the community more confidence that council are addressing the ASCOSA findings?
Okay, I think all the professional reports that have been done so far, even if they are out of date, we may have to revisit them, but they should be made available for the public for public scrutiny.
Thank you very much. And your questions we will answer and send to you via email as best we can. And I'd really like to invite you to the community consultation night that we'll be having. I think it's at night, or is it in the afternoon this year, in the evening, in relation to the budget that we're currently working on. So
Okay.
next Wednesday night. So thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins.
Tuesday night. 5:30. We don't have any questions from the gallery or petitions. So we move to 9.1 outstanding resolutions, and the recommendation is that the outstanding resolutions report be accepted. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Burns, and seconding that, please. Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Any questions?
Just to thank the CEO. She's been putting it in a format that is more readable for elected members, but also has got all the dates and action plans in there, which has been really good and useful.
Any further questions? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. 9.2 interim budget. Now Kelly may like to speak to this, and the recommendation, you've got recommendation A and B, which we'll do together. Can I have someone to move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to it? No? I might just ask Kelly to speak to it before we have any questions or debate.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So this report has come up due to us pushing out the adoption of the 26-27 budget to mid-July, with us out at public consultation at the moment. So in order to ensure service delivery and projects can continue that are already underway, or we can start procurement processes for some projects that need to start right as soon as possible to allow them to finish within the year. We've put this interim budget up. We have done a similar thing in the past, essentially asking for council to adopt 1/4 of the current version that's out for public consultation for operating, and the specific projects that are listed in attachment 1, so we can continue with those and commence on some of them as well. So happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that explanation. I understand the need for an interim budget whilst the 2026-7 annual business plan remains out for public consultation, and to ensure that we can continue with operations. However, I did note that delays have again been attributed to challenges with the new corporate system, particularly impacting rate modelling. And given that this system was intended to improve financial planning and reporting, can administration outline what specific issues have occurred and what steps have been taken to ensure this does not continue to impact future budget processes? Additionally, noting that a number of capital projects are carried over from the 2025-6 financial year, can administration clarify how unspent funds or project budgets are being treated, specifically where there is capacity to utilise existing carryover funds rather than relying solely on new interim budget allocations? And finally, what assurance can be provided that the interim budget appropriately reflects known commitments and does not introduce any additional financial risk prior to adoption of the full budget? So there's 3 questions.
Kelly may like to answer the first one, and Jodie might like to answer the last 2.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, in regards to the challenges that we experienced, we have moved to go live essentially with our revenue modules. We did experience some issues with data migration in terms of the actual data that came across into our new software, which required a bit more cleansing and analysis to make sure that we were modelling on good data so we could get accurate results. So we worked closely with the provider of the software, Tech One, who provided us assistance with that data cleansing, and made sure that we were operating from a base that provided us with accurate details. In terms of moving forward, we're actually running some more testing now and doing another modelling as well for the next budget workshop to see how things have moved. And we also have our external support for the software coming in to help us in terms of rolling that into a billing cycle and making sure we're in a good space going forward.
Thank you for your question. Through the Mayor, with regards to unspent money, because they're capital works, it's actually borrowings that we don't take out of the bank. So we haven't actually taken the money out of the bank. So for the projects that weren't finished this year, we're getting approval to carry the money forward, carry that budget forward. So we haven't actually taken the money out of the bank.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. Just a question along the $9.5 million for capital. You talk about in our documents here of what projects need to be carried over due to works in progress. All these projects concurrently running together, or they are staged for certain timeframes throughout the next 6 months?
Thank you for your question. Through the Mayor. So when we give you the first quarter budget, capital budget update, we'll give you a full year of how those projects are planned to be staged. There was one provided in January, I believe, for where the current projects, how they were staged throughout the year, but we have a number of staff working on those projects. The WIP projects that are, or the projects that are work in progress, most of them are already concurrently running. And the projects that have been identified for long lead items, we won't be spending the money in the next 2 weeks. It's just so that we can start the procurement process to commit the funds for things like vehicles, trucks that are longer lead items, and also getting contractors like asphalt companies to be locked in so we can make contracts if we do go into caretaker period, so those contracts can be signed prior to caretaker period, so we get contractors at a good time of the year.
Just the follow-up question, if I may, the point, I understand why you're doing this again, but when we look at approving the 26-27 budget, that's only in about 4 weeks' time. So I don't see the urgency in some areas. Some, yes, I can understand you need money to carry over because you still got to pay your way for those projects. But with the budget being approved in 4 weeks' time, surely this is a little bit premature.
Thank you for your question. Through the Mayor, if the caretaker period starts in the second week of September, we've got 8 weeks to get 80 projects procured before we get into caretaker period. That's why we have identified several projects to be brought forward so that we can start that process if we need to sign up to contracts prior to caretaker period. Obviously, if we get an announcement that the elections are deferred, we won't be in as much rush.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Are there any other questions? No. Would Councillor Henderson, who moved this, would you like to wrap it up? No. I'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.3, fees and charges. The first recommendation is that Council adopt the fees and charges as provided at attachment 1. Noting the relevant legislative fees and charges will be added to the register upon gazettal. Can someone move that for me? Please. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconded, Councillor Mann. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Either of you want to speak to that? Anybody have any questions? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. In relation to the proposed fees and charges, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the work undertaken by administration to prepare the schedule. It's quite comprehensive. However, I have concerns with some of the proposed increases, particularly given the current economic environment. Many in our community are already experiencing significant cost of living pressures, and any increase in fees can add to that burden. Whilst I understand the need to balance cost recovery and financial sustainability, I do not believe it's the right time to be increasing fees to our community, and for that reason I'm unable to support the proposed increases under the first part of the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you, Councillor Schiller.
I believe that our fees are quite reasonable. We need to adjust them for CPI, and just looking over our fees, I feel there's fees there that could be increased because of some things that could be added to those fees. So I think our community is getting a good deal with their fees and charges. We're not overcharging our community at all. So I'll be in support of it.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Any further discussion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Recommendation 2 is relating to the request that Business Victor Harbor made in regard to a waiver for outdoor dining and street trading. And the recommendation is to endorse the application of either A or B or C or D. Can I have somebody to move one of those? Councillor Schiller.
I would like to move C.
So C is a targeted waiver for activation and expansion with application and furniture fees to 2025-26 volumes and all additional furniture free of charge. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Burns. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Schiller?
Yes. At our briefing session, I indicated an interest in trying to accommodate Business Victor Harbor, and I've received some information from Kelly Knight-Stacey, Director of Finance, and she might like to speak to this after some of us have spoken. I asked the question about the allocation to our commercial rating, where we have a differential of 30% above the general rates, and the approximate figures that she gave me was that we are expending about $570,000 in that space, and we're generating about $500,000 in that space from the 30% rate differential. Therefore, we're spending in that particular area. So upon those reflections, I think that C will not be exactly what Business Victor Harbor we're after, but it does give an opportunity over the next 12 months for businesses who haven't been using their opportunity to put chairs and tables out or trading devices like clothing racks to try it over a year without any charge, but to do what they were requesting, which was to try and seek activation for those businesses that hadn't been doing it. So from that perspective, it's achieving that goal and giving them an opportunity to see if they can get a greater turnover through their business, and then we can review it into the future.
Thank you. Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Schiller in a number of points. In our previous discussions, there were concerns whether it would just be the existing businesses that already put out tables and chairs that would really receive the maximum benefit for this, and where the whole idea was to try and recharge other areas of Ocean Street and other areas nearby. And having gone and talked to a number of traders, some of them are quite excited at the opportunity, and others were not really aware that this was a possibility, which seemed to strengthen some concerns that it may be some of the existing operators who are probably pushing for this who will benefit the most. I think C allows, as Angela has mentioned, will strengthen the opportunity of new people being able to try this without giving all the benefit to some of the existing establishments. So I think C is probably a good compromise.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp?
Yes, it's interesting. We talk about cost of living crisis and about rate rises and rate payers, but businesses are doing it hard as well. And I see this as a two-edged sword. One is to minimise some costs to businesses, but also to give them an opportunity to expand their businesses without incurring additional costs. So I won't be supporting this one. I just feel that in this climate of economic disruptions throughout Australia and the world, that I think we should support our businesses as much as we can.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll put that to the floor. Oh, sorry, do you want to close the debate, Councillor Schiller? No, put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. We now move to the reviewed procurement policy, and that's been discussed. Council, I think that went out. Yeah, so there was asked for feedback from council, and the recommendation is that council adopt the review procurement policy, and that's in attachment 1. Can I have someone to move that way, please? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to it? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I am supportive of the revised procurement policy, and I will be voting to support it tonight. I did have just 2 concerns, and it's more, I suppose, that we need to have ongoing monitoring of these 2 areas. One was the shift away from defined local procurement weighting to a more discretionary approach that could result in less consistency on how local suppliers are considered. The previous policy had a mandatory 20% local weighting, and that's now replaced with up to 20% depending on circumstances. Also note that a number of operational elements have been moved out of the policy into internal procedures, and whilst I understand the rationale, it does reduce visibility at a policy level. So I think it's important to ensure that appropriate oversight and transparency is maintained. And as I said, I'm happy with the policy overall, that just encourage that these areas are carefully monitored to ensure the intended governance outcomes are achieved in practice.
Thank you, Councillor Burns, and I assure you that oversight has been maintained. This policy has gone through the Audit and Risk Committee, actually 2 meetings, one on the 18th of May and one on the 1st of June, and the Audit and Risk Committee were very happy with it. Anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you. I would like to move an amendment to this recommendation. The amendment is considering on page 122 of the agenda, section 610, exemptions from this policy. The amendment is to remove the word Chief Executive Officer. For example, the council or the Chief Executive Officer will determine exemptions from this policy. And I'd just like to see the Chief Executive Officer removed. The reason why I'm asking for that is that because when you go down a tender process and it's left to the CEO to make a decision, I believe it's a council decision. I think it's the chamber's right to make that decision, to step outside of policy. And I think delegating that responsibility to the CEO is not what the chamber's about. I think the chamber needs to maintain its authority and responsibility and accountability in dealing with this one. So that's my amendment.
Yep. Councillor Kemp, I've just spoken to Karen Rokoczynski, and she said operationally that could actually put us at risk because if we need to act in an emergency and procure something in an emergency, by removing the CEO of being able to do that means that we'd actually have to have a council meeting in order for the council to say that we can do it. So I don't think that that's appropriate. I'm happy to amend to adjourn this policy if you feel that it needs further discussion, but I'm not happy for that amendment to go through because I think it places the council at risk.
For future discussion and understanding, I'll move in a formal motion to adjourn this to the next council meeting in July, so that we can have a better understanding. So we could actually change the statement to include the CEO for emergency conditions only, but then look at other areas where the CEO and where the chamber should make those decisions. So I'm quite happy to move this to the July meeting.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that formal motion? Thank you, Councillor Burns. We'll vote on that formal motion. All those in favour of adjourning it? And those against? 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can we just do that again? Sorry, I missed the count. All those in favour of adjourning it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those against? 3. That formal adjournment has passed. And so we'll bring this back at the next meeting. Thank you. 9.5 is the draft community engagement policy. This is in relation to the legislative changes around community engagement that have been made. And while it is the minimum requirement that we need to undertake as community engagement, it doesn't mean to say that we can't do more if we want to, but the government's legislative changes have said that this is what council needs to do. So that recommendation is A and B. And this is just that the community engagement policy is actually going out for community engagement itself. So can I have someone to move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Burns. And seconding that, please. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. I always get the two of you mixed up for some reason. Do either of you want to speak to that? Thank you, Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I had previously 2 concerns, and in our discussions at the last meeting, they were satisfied. One being that the policy relies heavily on categorising decisions by the level of significance, and I would just had concerns that in categorising that it was open to interpretation, and also the policy sets minimum engagement requirements. But as you've rightly mentioned, it's the minimum. We can do far more, and that was discussed at the last meeting. So I'm happy on both those points. So happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie, do you want to speak to this? No? Anybody else want to speak to it? Put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Dog off leash trial period conclusion. The recommendation is in 3 parts, A, B and C. I'll take that as read. Does somebody want to move that way? Councillor Quinton, do you want to move this? No, you don't have to. You can move it, but you don't have to. It's not a voting for or against. Sorry? We can still move it and be undecided. Okay. You don't have to. Okay. Moved by Councillor Quinton, seconded by Councillor Kemp. Thank you. Do you want to speak to why you're undecided or speak to it? Or why you agree or disagree?
Yeah, so I'm undecided because I can appreciate sort of both points of view from this one. Firstly, the point of view that we should have some section of beach that is 24-hour access for dog walkers off leash, but then also noting the environmental concerns around the nesting habitat for the hooded plovers, which nest all the way through from August through to March each year, which is, most of the year. So I've just been sort of wrestling with this one as to how to figure out an alternative way around it. Keith Climpson's deputation this evening was good in the terms of the dog park, Victor Harbour getting an additional dog park, because that would satisfy a lot of the concerns from the feedback. Number one, that there is definitely a strong demand for off-leash areas, and a dog park would achieve that. And a lot of the beach users have raised safety concerns when they're walking on the beach and there's dogs off leash, which I think we also can't ignore. And that coupled with the environmental concerns sort of is making me lean towards agreeing with the recommendations in this one.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I support this recommendation, considering that Section C requests administration to consider future dog off-leash opportunities strategically through the development of the dog and cat management plan. I think there's plenty of opportunity for council to look at other areas along our beaches. I think Franklin Parade area is most probably one of the narrowest beach heads we have, and with the amount of seaweed that builds up along there at times, again, there's not much room for dogs to be running around off leash in that area. And there are some safety concerns raised by the community through the feedback, which I think we can't ignore. Even though there was a positive feedback from the off-leash trial, and it was a good success there with 41 to 51% of people saying it was good. But I think that through the dog and cat management plan, I think we can come up to some solution, another dog park, and some other opportunities there. So that's why I'm supporting this one.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller, then Councillor Burns.
I'd like to foreshadow that if this is lost, that I'd like to put a motion up that we continue to keep the trial site open until we actually tangibly find another location. People are searching for a beach location, and if the hooded plovers is the biggest contentious issue, obviously there's a little bit of interaction between people, but we haven't had any formal sort of issues. We haven't had any dog attacks that have been come to council. So I think we should leave that particular area open until we find another location, and see if there is any other location where the hooded plovers are less of are taking less of the beach space. So I won't vote for this, but I will vote for leaving the trial spot there until we find an alternate location.
Thank you. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy with A and C. I won't be supporting B. Look, the work undertaken by administration was terrific. The feedback gathered through the trial and consultation process was great. I agree with Councillor Schiller that we should look at extending the trial in the interim. I don't support the conclusion that this foreshore area should be excluded entirely as a dog off-leash area. In my view, it's fundamentally a question of balance. Our community needs access to beach areas for both general use and for exercising dogs. Victor Harbour should cater for both and not move too far in one direction. Whilst I acknowledge the environment considerations, including bird habitat, I do not believe that it requires a complete exclusion of dog off-leash access. These types of risks can be managed through practical measures such as temporary fencing, clear signage and responsible use controls rather than removing access altogether. I'm mindful that Victor Harbour has relatively limited number of accessible beachfront locations where dogs can be exercised off leash, and dogs require space to run, not just to be walked on the lead. The report itself highlights divided community sentiment with a significant proportion of residents supporting the trial and the benefits it provides for dog exercising and community use. That suggests it's not a clear case for full exclusion. For these reasons, I believe excluding this area entirely goes too far, and I'll be more supportive of a balanced approach that allows both environmental protection and continued community access. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, do you want to close the debate, Councillor Quinton?
I'll just ask a clarification question, please. If we don't have the 24-hour off-leash area, it will still be off-leash for those certain timeframes in the morning and evening. Is that correct?
Yes, it'll still be off-leash, so they'll still have to contend with the plovers and be kept away from the plovers in the morning and evening. It's just that, and also in summer, in winter rather, when it is off-leash. So it's just for that period.
So just to, clarifying, I guess, for everyone that people can still walk their dogs off leash. It's not banning it completely. It's just making it not 24/7.
Okay, I'd like to put that to the floor. All those in favour? No, we're doing it all together. It's one recommendation. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those against? 1, 2, 3. That's lost. That's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Mann, and good luck at your antenatal class. We now move to 10.2, major event application, the Flinders to Fleurieu car rally. I'll do that recommendation. There's one recommendation, or the first recommendation with A, B, C and D, that Council approve the staging of the Flinders to Fleurieu rally to be held on the 25th of September this year, subject to the conditions A, B, C and D. Would somebody like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie, and seconding that, Councillor Henderson. Would you like to speak to it?
I think it's great that we can have events here and host stages of all different sorts of events. So I'm in support of this.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Yes, also in support, obviously. It's good to see another major event come to Victor Harbour. Puts us on the map.
That's great. Councillor Burns.
Thank you. I support this item. Events like this play an important role in raising the profile of Victor Harbour, both regionally and more broadly statewide, and help further position our city as a destination for major events. Importantly, it also brings people into our community, whether as participants, support crews or spectators, which in turn provides a direct benefit to local businesses, accommodation providers and hospitality venues. Whilst I acknowledge there are some short-term impacts associated with road closures and event logistics, I think overall benefits to the local economy and the broader community outweighs these temporary inconveniences. So I'm supportive of this.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you. Yes, I do support this because winter is not a very good time of the year for our businesses and events here. So having these types of events in our winter periods is a great asset to our community. And I agree with the other comments made by other members.
Thank you. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. And yes, I think that it will be a terrific event for our community, for businesses, for motorsport enthusiasts. And it is a event that actually travels through reading this quite a number of different council areas on gravel roads and main roads, and should be quite exciting for the area. Sorry. Oh, there's more part. I was skipping away. Thank you. We do have recommendation 2 around the council exercises its delegations, and that's a long recommendation that I'll take as read rather than me reading it all out. I will also do on block recommendation 3 and 4, given that the first recommendation has gone through. So that's recommendation 2, 3 and 4 on block. If someone wants to move that way, Councillor Burns and Councillor Henderson seconding that. Do you want to speak to any of those? No. No. Anyone want to speak to any of those? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Environment and infrastructure, speed limit review, the Victor Harbour Road. This is in relation to the speed limit on the Victor Harbour Road, where that awful accident happened on the corner of Hindmarsh Tears Road. So it's looking at reducing that speed limit. Personally, I don't think that goes far enough. I think that there needs to be flashing lights like there is as you go through Kaipo Forest to approach the main intersection going into Meadows. There are the flashing lights that remind people that there is a dangerous intersection. My view is even if there is a speed limit review limiting people on the speed of the Victor Harbour Road, people coming along Hindmarsh Tears Road that have got their radio on or are distracted are going to still go through that intersection, and this isn't enough. I think we need to do more advocacy around that. And look at, but when we look at the recommendation, there is recommendation 5 that we request a review of that intersection design and traffic environment. I don't think the design needs to be changed so much as actually having something that makes people realise that it is an incredibly dangerous intersection. And my heart goes out to the communities and the people that drive through that intersection on a regular basis, because it has proven time and time again to be really dangerous, and it has proven time and time again that just looking at the design hasn't worked, and that the whole of the traffic environment needs to be addressed and looked at. So certainly if these 5 recommendations go through council, I'll be asking administration to put in the suggestion to the in relation to the traffic environment and putting those flashing lights in there to warn people about the intersection, because it is extremely dangerous. I will do that recommendation on block because it is all related to the same thing and they follow each other. So unless there's anyone wants to take out one particular aspect of it, Councillor Kemp, you do?
Yes, I would like to look at recommendation 1 as a separate item. Thank you. All
right. So I'll do recommendation 1 and then I'll do recommendation 2, 3, 4 and 5 together. So recommendation 1, that council support a speed limit reduction from 100 kilometres rural speed limit to 80 kilometres on the Victor Harbour Road from the existing 80 kilometre section near the Welsh Road, Waterport Road roundabout north to and including the intersection of Crow's Nest Road. Would someone like to move that? Would you like to move that, Councillor Kemp, since you're suggesting that one?
Yes, if I do move it, I'll do it with an amendment.
You'll move it you can move it and ask for a variation, and the seconder can agree with your variation.
Well, either way.
Or you can move it whichever way you like. It hasn't been moved.
I'll move it then, and I'll be doing a variation.
No, you can move it. It hasn't been moved. It's just a suggested recommendation, so you can put your variation in straight away.
Yep, thank you for that. What it reads is that the council supports the speed limit reduction from the default 100 k's rural speed limit to 80 k's on Victor Harbour Road, and stops there and exclude the rest of the sentence. And my amendment would be that the Victor Harbour Road between Banbrick and Victor Harbour Road and Monte Rosa and Victor Harbour Road intersection. So we're not excluding all the way from the roundabout at Urrumbira all the way up to Crow's Nest Road. We're only doing that section that leads into the intersection, which is the point of what the discussion's about. So for us to look at excluding the whole area, it's just that one section there. So I'll read this out again. So the council supported a speed limit reduction from the default 100 kilometres per hour rural speed limit to 80 kilometres per hour on Victor Harbour Road between Banbrick and Victor Harbour Road intersection and Monte Rosa and Victor Harbour Road intersection. That way you reduce the speed coming into the intersection dramatically down to 80 k's without interfering with the rest of the road infrastructure of speed. So I think in that respect, because there are some straight stretches from the Urrumbira roundabout from Armstrong or Welch Road, people doing 80 k's along there will be overtaken and will cause more danger for people going at 80 k's an hour along that section of straight roads where people will tend to overtake. If you keep it at 100, people maintain the speed and get there, and then they'll slow down at Banbrick Road to 80 k's, and then when they get to Monte Rosa, they can speed back up to 100 if they so desire. So that's my amendment.
It's not an amendment, that's your motion.
That's my motion.
That's your motion.
Thank you.
I'll ask someone to second that. Are you seconding that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Quinton, done again and again. Councillor McKenzie. If this motion doesn't go forward, then we'll revert back to the original one. So you've spoken to this, obviously, Councillor Kemp. Councillor McKenzie, do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Kemp's perspective on this. I don't believe it has to be quite a large stretch of road where the speed reduction takes effect. Really, the issue is that intersection there on High Marsh Tears Road. So I think if that's a focal point of where the speed limit is reduced, that also wakes people up entering into that zone that I'm slowing down now, be more cautious of incoming traffic, and then I can speed back up. So I'm in support of this.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Schiller?
Firstly, I've got a question to Director of Infrastructure about the prospect of variations of going up and down from 100 to 80 back to 80. What you think this opinion would be of such a change, this change that's been put to us in this particular motion here. Without, I don't want to put you on the spot as a personal opinion, but from previous times where DIT have approved these changes.
Thank you for your question. Through the Mayor, I can't speak on behalf of DIT as you've alluded, but if the council wanted to consider more information, we could approach DIT for advice first. It's unlikely that there would be lots of speed limit changes over a short period of a short road area, because then people become complacent and they don't abide to the speed limits anyway. But we can definitely seek more information if council don't make a decision tonight.
Could we adjourn this, get more information and bring it back? I'll put a recommendation. One, I know we're all emotive about this particular incident that occurred in the recent history, but I think it's an important decision to get right. So I think we need a bit of more advice about those changes and whether the 80 kilometre strip as a whole is a better option, and how receptive DIT are to that before we advocate to them.
So you're putting in an adjournment motion to be adjourned to the July ordinary meeting to enable further advice to be sought from the Department of Infrastructure and Transport on how receptive they are to speed limit reviews.
Yep, and it will actually also allow me to look at those intersections myself, but it's mainly to get a better indicator from DIT.
Yep. Do I have a seconder for that adjournment motion? That will lapse for want of a seconder. Sorry, Councillor Schiller, that adjournment motion has lapsed. We go back to the main motion. Does anybody else want to speak to that? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Having experienced that road myself, I can say, I mean, there's been a number of near misses that I've had where people have just sped out. Having flashing lights, I think, would be a great idea. But also, Councillor Kemp is correct that in the lead up, so many cars overtake you. So unless you reduce the speed limit near the intersection, if you do it too far back, cars just use it as a unofficial overtaking lane. And that's one of the dangers. And we have other areas within Victor that have varying speed limits. You know, Armstrong Road is a classic example as well.
Thank you. Councillor Quinton?
I'll be supporting Councillor Kemp's motion here. Just flagging Squires Road, which is the one opposite Mount Rosa. One of my good mates lives up that road, and it is one of the scariest intersections on the whole Victor Harbour Road, I reckon, probably the scariest. So I'm definitely supportive of that. Ultimately, I think the safest option really for the Victor Harbour Road would be to make the whole thing an 80k zone all the way to Mount Compass, but I know that would be hugely unpopular with the community. But I think this is definitely a step in the right direction to save some lives. So.
Thank you. Any further discussion, Councillor Schofield?
Yes, look, I'll support this. And I think one of the biggest problems with that new intersection, and I do struggle with it a little bit, it is now the width. And it's where once before you just had virtually one lane, all of a sudden you get there and you've got a couple of lanes and some lines. And as you say, people are just whizzing up around the corner, up the hill, and I can easily see why there are accidents there. So I agree. I think some flashing lights that warn people that this is a dangerous area and be prepared.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No. Councillor Schiller, do you, or not Councillor Schiller, that was Councillor Kemp. Do you want to close the debate?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think that the distance, and I appreciate the comments from around the room. And the thing is that, you know, from Banbrick Road to Monte Rosa, must be, if I say roughly 2 kilometres is a fair distance, you know, to reduce your speed down to. I think, you know, by having the other information there to dit about putting in some flashing lights or some type of indication of a intersection dangerous, whether it's signs or flashing lights, it would be a great improvement as well. But reducing the speed limit down to that 2 kilometre space, in my mind, would hopefully to improve that area. It's unfortunate when this all came about for the redevelopment of the road and the intersection. DIT said to the community public consultation process that they'll flatten the intersection out so people can see further up the road. Well, apparently it's not flattened out. It seems to be raised higher, which gives not enough direct line of sight. So I think that's part of the problem. But anyway, this is a step in the right direction, and I agree with Councillor Quinton about, you know, Spars Road and Monte Rosa roads and those types of roads, Crows Hill, Nest Road. They're all dangerous intersections because of the types of road in the area. Maybe eventually one day we'll have the right solution for that to reduce the death toll on our roads. So this is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now put that first recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. And I'll do recommendation 2 to 5 on block. Just altering the wording of recommendation 3 so that it matches recommendation 1. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Seconding Councillor Burns. Do either of you want to speak to them? No. Does anybody want to speak to them? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. And if you could, given that most of the elected members spoke about the flashing lights and agreed with that, if you could bring that up with DIT, that would be when you look at the traffic control and operational improvements, that could be something that's specified. Thank you. 12.2 is the Regional Community Sport and Recreation Precinct Heads of Agreement extension. This actually is an extension that we want that will work in our favour because we are still looking at doing our due diligence in relation to the contracts and all of those sorts of things, and we want to be very careful with our due diligence. So this buys us some time to do that. I understand that while I was away, you had a briefing in relation to this. So the recommendation is that Council authorise the Chief Executive Officer to execute the heads of agreement for the Regional Sport and Recreation Precinct with the revised expiry date of 31st of August 2026. You moving that way, please? Thank you, Councillor Quinton, and seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I understand the rationale for requesting the extension of the heads of agreement to allow further time to finalise project costs and to continue negotiations. This is a significant proposal for our community, and it's important that Council takes the time necessary to ensure that all key elements are properly considered before any final commitment is made, as the Mayor alluded to. However, I do have some concerns I think are important to acknowledge. It has been acknowledged there's still a number of key matters that remain unresolved, including the finalisation of core commercial agreements, clarity around financial impacts and the operating model longer term. Without going into any details, because most of these items are still in confidence, I am concerned that Council is being asked to continually progress the project while a number of these important elements are still being worked through and before we have full visibility of the overall risk and financial position. I also think it's important that we remain focused on ensuring an appropriate balance between public investment, private risk and public benefit, particularly given the scale of this project and its long-term financial and rate implications for the community, and that we do not allow the momentum of this project itself to drive decision-making ahead of fully informed consideration. In addition, I strongly believe that once all this information is available, be it July or August, and this project is in a more finalised form, there should be a further public consultation. The cost scope and structure of this project have materially changed since the initial consultation based on concept design and earlier estimates, and it's important for the community that they have an opportunity to consider the proposal in its current form. That said, I acknowledge that the extension is time limited and provides an opportunity to resolve these outstanding matters, and on that basis I am prepared to support the extension, but I do so with the expectation that Council will be provided with clear, complete and transparent information, and that the community will have the opportunity to be re-engaged before any further decisions are made. I have a question as well, which is, over the weekend, the Advertiser reported that Port Augusta Council has experienced an $8.7 million gap between costs and revenue associated with its council-run sporting precinct since it opened in 2015. Given the concerning situation, what assurances can administration provide to elected members that the business case and Prudential reporting underpinning Victor Harbour's proposed sporting precinct have sufficiently been tested for financial sustainability, particularly around usage, revenue and whole-of-life costs, and have not relied on growth or revenue assumptions that could expose ratepayers to similar long-term financial risk?
Thank you. I'll take that question on notice, and we can send a response to you. And I think, the key matters that you brought up in terms of the commercial agreement, the operating model, that increasing the time for the heads of agreement will allow us to do our due diligence around that, because certainly we don't want to rush any decision making, and that rushing decision making will actually place us and the community at risk. So, this is part of us doing our due diligence and being transparent in relation to needing to extend that heads of agreement. Who seconded this? Councillor Schofield, did you want to speak to this? No. Does anybody else want to speak to it? Councillor Schiller?
I think that we need to extend the heads of agreement. It is only a short period. We went through in our briefing session extensively why this needed to occur, and there's a greater risk to let the heads of agreements lapse. We've gone so far on this project, and to let the heads of agreement elapse is a greater risk than extending it for a couple more months.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you. I won't be supporting this. This is the 9th extension, 2 years in the making. I'm not against the sports precinct. I think we need one. Yes, we could have had one built by now if we went for the design and construct model, which we first did. But I supported the private partnership expression of interest to see what come out of it and what we would get benefits out of it. From what I've seen and what I'm looking at the moment is that the model that has been presented and the cost to the community is, to me, is far greater than what we actually got to get out of it, you know, with the 149-year lease, the loss of control of our community land. We put a lot of investment into this project. There was no equity in it for the community. To me, it seems that the developer is getting more out of it than we are. So I just believe that I think it's run its course, 2 years. And I remember when we first spoke about heads of agreement, that it was stated that if we don't get a outcome in the short term of these heads of agreement, the project will stop. And here we are at the 9th extension 2 years later, and we're still doing our due diligence. We're still following up information. We still don't have the true costings, because how do you get the true costings when the cost of construction is rising constantly? The whole model of an operator and the issues around subsidies to our sporting clubs, that all still is in abeyance at the moment, and still, things are happening in the space. But again, I think the community is at a point where either, and I agree with my motion on notice coming up later on about a further consultation, I think the community needs to be updated to have a better understanding where the council's at and what we've been doing over the last 2 years. And this constant extending the heads of agreement constantly, to me, gives me a feeling that the community is not happy about our performance, because we don't seem to know what we're doing, because we keep extending all the time. So I think it's run its course, and I think it's a point in time that we stop where we can and look at the build and construct model, and I think we can still get out of it with a reasonable cost.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. I think the build and construct model required quite significant government grant funding, and I'm not sure how much they're funding these sorts of models at the moment. But certainly some of the issues that you brought up, I think, are very valid, and that's why the council is asking for more time, so that we can actually do our due diligence properly and address some of those concerns that you have raised, rather than rushing into a decision that we're not ready for. Sorry, Councillor Mackenzie, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm in support of this. It is such a large project in a different model to usual, so we need to make sure all the risks are understood and mitigated in this process. So I think it makes sense to extend this heads of agreement to make sure that we are fully understanding what we're entering into, and if there is anything that we need to be aware of, that's dealt with before progressing any further.
Thank you. Any other comments? I will close the debate. Or did you want to speak? Wrap it up, Councillor Quinton? No. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you.
Division, please.
Yes, certainly. All those in favour, please stand. Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Quinton, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. And those against, Councillor Burns and Councillor Kemp. That motion has passed, and I'm glad that it's passed because it means that council has the opportunity to do its due diligence and make sure that it is doing the right thing for the community. We'll move on to 12.3, Open Space and Environment Yearly Summary. The recommendation that council receives and notes the yearly summary report. Moving Councillor Schofield and seconding Councillor Henderson. Do you want to speak to this, Councillor Schofield?
Thank you. Look, I was extremely impressed by this report, and I believe it's a report like this that the people of Victor Harbor should be reading, because when they talk about the rates, the costs, where our money goes, for those at home that may not have what I have in front of me, I will just briefly read out key assets maintained. Now, this is out of 3 pages, but this is just small. 22 playgrounds, 16 public barbecues cleaned twice a week, 107 picnic settings and 237 bench seats looked after, approximately 194 hectares of Class A reserves requiring mowing, fertilising, coring, top dressing, edging, irrigation, tree pruning, garden bed maintenance and asset upkeep. Approximately 96 hectares of garden beds requiring ongoing weeding, mulching, etc. And 1,040 hectares of Class B reserves and 832 hectares of Class C reserves maintained to the service standards, including mowing, etc. Now, that is just a very small section of what I read. And when I read that, I've always been extremely proud of Victor Harbor and the staff that work for us. While down at the foreshore, I continually received comments from visitors saying how clean, how tidy, how well kept Victor Harbor is. As an elected member, I knew that our outside staff did quite well. I've seen them around. But to read this, I believe that we, as elected members, should be sending, I think it's 60 people work in this particular area. If I go back and have a look, I could be wrong.
22, Councillor Schofield.
Thank you. I believe that we, as the elected members of the City of Victor Harbor, on behalf of our community, should be writing to these 22 people to thank them, because quite often, while we and the citizens of Victor Harbor are sitting in a warm house and a cosy fire, our staff are out cutting trees, removing branches, looking at flooding and that. That is part of what our rates cover. They're a very important part. So the insurances and the wages and that for our staff go up the same as everybody else's. And so we're not putting up our rates just for the sake of it. So I am absolutely proud as an elected member to sit and read this report, and I believe the residents of Victor Harbor should be reading it to understand we're not just roads, rubbish and rates.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Well said. And if you wanted to put in a motion without notice for the council to write a letter to thank the staff on the open space and environment team for the work that they have done based on this report. I'm happy to accept that as a motion without notice tonight. But they're also happy to pass that on to them verbally as well. But, you know, do I have a seconder for this? Oh, sorry, Councillor Henderson, did you want to say anything?
I think Councillor Schofield has said all that needs to be said.
Thank you. Anybody else want to say anything? Councillor Burns and then Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the comments that have been made so far. The report was fantastic. A significant amount of work has been delivered across a wide range of areas that I think reflects very positively on the team and the contribution they make to the community. There was a couple of observations I think we need to keep an eye on that were raised by the team in the report. Firstly, the volume of work being undertaken continues to grow, particularly with capital upgrades and environment programs. And whilst that's positive, it's important that we also consider the long-term resourcing implications to ensure that there's adequate staff to maintain the service levels and that they're sustainable going forward. The other is that as we expand our asset base through new infrastructure and upgrades, there's an increasing need to ensure long-term maintenance and life cycle costs are fully accounted for. And the report highlights the impact of weather events and ongoing need to respond to further environment challenges, which will only become more significant in the future. So I think not only does the report show what great work they're doing, but it also highlights some of the challenge areas that the council need to support this team and make sure that they have adequate staff. There's adequate costs for the maintenance and life cycle costs in our budgets when we work through. So,
thank you. Councillor Schiller.
Also like to congratulate staff on the report. It was excellent. And maybe it might be great to see like a slightly watered down version going out to in our newsletter to some degree, and maybe a bit of Facebook promotion, because some of those figures are terrific, and I don't think our community truly can see where their rating dollars go, and this is the sort of information that we need to put right in front of their faces so that they can realise that it's much more that we are delivering to them.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. I've just been told on the 15th of July, we've got a briefing in relation to a service level review for the open space and environment teams, which brings up some of the concerns that you raised, Councillor Burns.
Sorry, what Councillor Schofield mentioned with a recommendation on notice without notice, can I also mention that that includes all the volunteers that help as well? Because there's permanent staff, but there's a huge number of volunteers as well.
Perhaps when Councillor Schofield makes her motion without notice, you could add that to that. Any further discussion, Councillor Kemp?
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to say that I think we are all very appreciative, and the community is, of the council staff as a whole. It's nice that we've got a great report from the Open Space and Environment Group and the work they're doing, and it's great to see that. And again, it's good to acknowledge them in the process of what we're doing. With the 22 FTEs and the 200 volunteers that operate in this space, they do a very good job under various conditions. One of the things I would like to make mention about what the team could do a bit more, it's not about their performance, it's about the rules and regulations around roundabouts under the Australian road rules, and I think through DIT, you talk about, or the Traffic Management Act, that roundabout plantings, you must have a clear line of sight across the roundabout to see who's in the traffic, because the rules say that whoever's in the roundabout has right of way. So if you can't see where the cars are coming from because you've got too much vegetation there, so the ideas of the Australian road rules around roundabouts vegetation is to make vegetation low enough so people can see line of sight across there. So at the moment we have a few roundabouts which are heavily vegetated. You can't see across. That one's on Maud Street, Armstrong Road roundabout. You can't see across there. If you're coming out of Maud Street, cars come swinging around the roundabout very quickly because you can't see them. And of course, you'd either stop or take a chance if you're halfway, start to accelerate. So I think we need to keep that vegetation to a minimum and to do it, because you look at the Welch Road roundabout, which is the DIT roundabout, and they keep the vegetation very low there, so you can actually see any traffic in and around the roundabouts and the intersections there. So I think if the director, if Jodie Roberts, could actually look into that to see if that's the case, and if we have to keep compliant with the Australian road rules and the South Australian rules as well to make those places safe.
Yeah. I'm aware that we do the vegetation on the DIT roundabouts as well as on our roundabouts, and that all of our roundabouts comply with the Australian road rules. And there has just been not the Maud Street roundabout, but the part of the island by Maud Street has just been cleared of all vegetation and just ground, mulchy ground bark put down there, so that there is a greater line of sight. And I know that the volunteers that are doing the roundabouts in the main street have been talked to about keeping that vegetation low so that there is the line of sight, and council and DIT work closely together about that. But I think the points that you make, Councillor Kemp, are very valid.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Now we go to minutes of council meetings. The Recreation Centre Management Committee meeting on 19th of May. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Burns. And seconding that, please. Councillor Schofield. Any questions? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. The CEO Performance Review Committee meeting on the 20th of May. Would someone like to move those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Kemp. And seconding that, please, Councillor McKenzie. Any questions? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The Special Audit and Risk Committee on the 1st of June. The recommendations to receive and note the minutes. Somebody moving that, please. Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Seconding, Councillor Henderson. Any questions? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee. There are 3 recommendations there. I'll do those recommendations en bloc unless anybody has any objections. Councillor Schiller, happy to move en bloc. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Henderson, are there any questions? Councillor Schiller.
Just noting there's for recommendation 2 is our annual action list, and this is really important. I find that our DAPE is very has been dictated very heavily by state government, and they took themselves as being doing their consultancy at a different level to locally, and we had our local contribution, but this action list is really important, and although our manager of community and wellbeing will have a significant amount of input into this, because she's obviously the one that's most in touch with this, but I encourage every department of our council to look at how they can action and suggest actions that are tangible for every department of our council. Back to recommendation 3, which is we've requested through the Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee that we are engaged about the transport strategy that we're about to work on, and also that's another one where we need to get people like the Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee in there reasonably early, because there may be things that although the consultants will have a great knowledge base I really encourage looking at the planning of that to make sure that that the Disability Advisory Committee do get engagement early in, at the Local Government Association OGM. There was a lot of talk about co-design, and co-design, if it works well, is a great thing. It's not something that I have seen a great deal of co-design within councils at this stage, but it does have its place, and to take some of those elements of co-design on such an important engagement for particularly for people with disability on those transport issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp?
Just a clarity question, if I may. I understand that the committee has an action list and staff members on the committee. Does not the staff member take the action list to council administration to action to actually implement what the actions are required? Because the action list may have some timelines and dates and things involved. I'm not quite sure an annual action plan, what it will do any more than the action list, which has been implemented by staff anyway. So just, unless there's something different in there, which I don't understand or know, I'm quite happy to see what the action plan is different to the action list by the staff.
Karen suggested that's just a monitoring and reporting list, and against the action plan. So looking at the action plan and then monitoring and reporting against the action plan. So it's basically being accountability.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I'm just wondering about staff time. So are we doubling up or not? Or you're not doing that already, monitoring the action list and what's been happening?
Yep. Do you want to respond? Do you want to, rather than me saying what you're saying?
Maybe.
Graham?
Yeah, through the mayor, excuse me, certainly there's an action list that runs with the general things or matters and items that arise during the course of committee meetings. And they just might be following up on things, conversations, letters, those sorts of things. The action plan that this is talking about is specifically around the disability access and inclusion plan that's just been developed and created. So it's just making sure that we monitor that plan just like we would most other plans for council. So it's really, and in fact, that action itself would to action. An action plan will find its way into an action list as well. There's way too many actions in that, but that's essentially how it would work.
Brief one.
Just that our date is runs over from 2026 to 2030, and it's a higher level document than this document. This is looking at our actions and maybe our events that might occur over the coming year. So this is just narrowing it down to what we are going to try and achieve throughout the whole of council, and looking at there's about 6 elements to the access and the inclusion plan, and we will look at those 6 areas and look at our whole council and see where we can achieve those goals throughout this 1 year.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Subsidiaries and representative reports. We've got the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority 3rd budget review, and I might ask Karen to speak to this. We've got the one recommendation that council approve the 3rd budget review, and I'll let that be as read. What I'll do is I'll get a mover and a seconder, and then I might ask Karen to speak to it. Does someone want to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding, please. Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Karen, can you just speak to it, and then I'll ask Councillor Henderson if she wants to speak.
Certainly. So the 3rd budget review is seeking an additional contribution from City of Victor Harbor of $87,000, we've been able to find an offset that means that we only need a transfer from one project line to another project line of $17,000, so an increase to our budget of that amount. And it's largely due to the amount of service growth that Fleurieu has had, so from new houses, but also due to the escalated fuel costs, which you can understand a business of their nature expends a whole lot in fuel given the trucks and the driving that's involved. So the reason for seeking it as a cash contribution rather than simply reporting it as a budget deficit is to facilitate their cash flow into the first quarter of their 26-27 period, and to make sure we remain in surplus at end of financial year to support that.
Thank you. And I believe this has gone through Alexandrina and Yankalilla. Yeah, can you speak to that?
So it has been through the chambers of District Council of Yankalilla and of Alexandrina Council. District Council of Yankalilla passed the addition. Alexandrina hasn't, but noting that their contribution was significantly higher at 247,000 or something to that effect, it will need to be revised and go back through their chamber, similar to what happened with us in a previous budget review for the same reasons.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to the recommendation?
Yes, it's very logical considering the global situation and the fuel costs. So I'm quite happy to support this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Schofield? No. Does anybody else want to speak to it? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy noting the report, and it was really encouraging to see an operating surplus being maintained. And I do also note the increasing cost pressures, particularly in relation to fuel and service demand, which is impacting the authority's financial position. I note that this has required an increase in council contributions and internal budget adjustments to maintain a balanced outcome. And whilst these adjustments are certainly manageable in the short term, I think it's important that we continue monitoring whether these cost pressures are ongoing and ensure that the authority remains financially sustainable without placing increased burden on contributing councils.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to this? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Southern and Hills Local Government Association, there's a draft business plan and budget. The recommendation is that council, the first recommendation is that council provide no further feedback and budget is presented, or provide the following feedback to the board for consideration in the final implementation of the budget. Would somebody like to move A with either A1 or A2? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. A1. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Does anybody want to speak to it? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. And the recommendation B and C. Sorry. That's just the one recommendation. So I beg your pardon. This is recommendation A1 plus recommendation B and C, all in the one recommendation. So can I just have another vote on that? All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. Motion on notice regarding the Regional Community Sport and Recreation Precinct, Councillor Kemp. And, oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. No matters of urgency, no questions on notice. Are there any questions without notice? No. Now we go to motions on notice. And before we start, because this is related to the Regional Community Sport and Recreation Precinct, and I've only just found this out in the last few minutes publicly, the staff have, or Jody, who's been the main negotiator, has negotiated in terms of rights of renewal for the lease of the Sport and Recreation Precinct, just a 99-year lease, not 99 plus 25 plus 25. So they've agreed to it only being 99. So I think that's really good news, because that was one of the concerns that the community had. So that's great negotiation, Jodie, and I'm glad that I'm allowed to say that publicly now. So Councillor Kemp, would you like to propose your motion?
Thank you. I move that the City of Victor Harbor undertake a further public consultation process on the proposed regional community sports and recreation precinct at the earliest practical opportunity.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Kemp, would you like to talk to your motion?
The initial public consultation on the regional community sports and recreational precinct, I believe, was conducted in June 2024. Since that time, more than 2 years have passed, and there have been significant developments relating to the project, including changes to the funding arrangements, project design, timelines, and ongoing negotiations. The extended timeframe, together with multiple extensions of the heads of agreement, has led to the growing community frustration and uncertainty regarding the future of the project. Despite considerable discussion and investment of time and resources, there has been limited tangible progress visible to the broader community. Given the passage of time and the evolving nature of the proposal, it is reasonable to consider that community views may have changed since the original consultation. Residents have the opportunity to review and consider the information that has emerged over the past 2 years and may now have a different understanding of both the opportunities and challenges associated with the development. As elected representatives, we have a responsibility to ensure that major decisions continue to reflect the wishes and expectations of our community. This is particularly important for a project that involves a substantial contribution of public funds and long-term commitment of a community land for a period, now, as we heard tonight, 99 years and not 149 years, which is a good thing. But because of those changes, I think the community would like to have some feedback on that as well. A further consultation process would provide Council with up-to-date community's feedback, confirm whether there remains strong public support for the project, and assist Council in making informed decisions based on current community sentiment. And I think that the community would like this, and I think they want it. And from the feedback I get, yes, they do, because there is still confusion out there now with timelines and so much data is going out and it's changing constantly. Even us councillors at times, trying to keep up to date with all the changes and the updates that we get. So I believe the community should be given some latest information, and so they can then provide their feedback.
Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to second this motion. I think it's a reasonable and important step, given the length of time that has passed since the original consultation and the fact that there has been a number of developments and changes to the project since that time. As elected members, we have a responsibility to ensure that major decisions continue to reflect the views and expectations of our community, particularly where a project involves significant public investment and long-term commitments. A further round of consultation would provide the community with an opportunity to reconsider the project in its current form based on the most up-to-date information available. It will also give Council greater confidence that any future decision is informed not only by technical and financial considerations, but by the current and relevant community feedback. For those reasons, I support the motion and believe it's an appropriate and prudent step in the process. Thank you.
Any discussion? Councillor Henderson, then Councillor Schiller.
I'll not be supporting this because I don't believe our community would like us to be spending more of their rates on this, given that there is currently nothing further to consult with in relation to the project.
Councillor Schiller.
I won't be supporting this tonight. We have done our due diligence for nearly 3 years, and this is the only way that we can afford this particular project to go with our public-private partnership. If we were to go the self-build model, if we looking at our $11.7 million, we've only received $2.5 million plus $830,000, which is, was that 3 point something or other? I haven't worked it out. But we would need in excess of $10 million at least to just put a very, very basic facility there that would not get the facility that we are going to get by going through this public-private partnership. We also need to consider that people probably don't understand that the amount of community land that's being revoked is only a small parcel of that lot 202. It's approximately 30% of the land that is being utilised by the rec centre and the other private initiatives that will go on that particular block of land. So there's, as councillors, we have done our due diligence and we have found the most affordable way to provide a future project that needs to occur with the growth that we are having projected to grow over the next 50 years. And it's ridiculous to think that we can hold off on this project, and considering that our basketball is at capacity, our gymnastics, we have worked so hard with the gymnastics to accommodate them, and we have come so far, and I think we need to trust the elected members and the amount of community engagement that has occurred over this time and move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Any other discussion? Councillor Kemp, do you want to close the debate?
Thank you. And thank you for the input from the members who spoke. Yes, I can understand where people are coming from. As from the cost, it's according to the reports, only $2,000. We just transferred $17,000 from the administration cost centre to another cost centre for the Fleurieu Waste Authority of $17,000. So I think there is money within the current budget, not in this budget line for public consultation, but certainly $2,000 is not a game breaker. The thing is that, you know, again, because everyone says that we've done due diligence, well, we keep talking about we must continue to do due diligence. So either we've done it or we haven't done it. The point is that it's been over 2 years and so much information has been put out there, either directly or indirectly, where people do not have a full understanding of what is really happening, or they're just listening to the negative. This is an opportunity for council to actually present the information as we have it today, the latest information available, and let the community know exactly what is happening. Because we are elected by the community to represent them, to make decisions, but also we're here to actually continue to listen and be transparent with our community. And when there are issues like this, which is a major impact, a major project, that, you know, when the timelines and the information flow has changed, I think it's only fair that we give them an opportunity to re-look at it and reconsider and have them see whether, you know, are they willing, you know, to fork out more money, their money, which is community money, what we call rates, on a project where, again, I understand Councillor Schiller's talking about what she stated about, you know, going back and looking at another model and things like that. But I think we never really explored that in detail because of the private partnership expression of interest. But again, I think we could get one built in that, but I think that's why I think it's best for the community to have their say now, and give them an opportunity due to the changes and the facts that what we know as elected members.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's lost. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor B.
Division, please.
Certainly. Those in favour? Councillor Burns and Councillor Kemp. Those against? Oh, sorry. So if we do this again, sorry. So the recommendation is that we undertake further public consultation. All those in favour? Stand. Councillor Burns and Councillor Kemp. Those against are Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Quinton, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. Yeah. Sorry about that. And I do note that there are ongoing consultations. So the consultation on the community land revocation proposal, the code amendment consultation, we've got consultation coming up in terms of our business plan and long-term financial plan drafts, and people can ask questions for clarification. We've had the community satisfaction surveys, and there are dedicated reference group and stakeholder meetings with particularly basketball and gymnastics to help inform them and looking at operational plan considerations. And the council has made a decision tonight to continue with its due diligence in order to mitigate risks and to get this right. So we now move on to confidential items. And the first one is related to the interwar heritage. Sorry. Oh, motions without notice. I beg your pardon. Sorry, those that are leaving. We have got motions without notice. If you want to stay for that, my apologies. So motions without notice. Questions without notice. We had that. That. Got that. Motions without notice. Councillor Schofield and then Councillor Quinton. Councillor Schofield.
Okay, thank you. May need some assistance with the wording, but that a letter of appreciation is sent to the open spaces and environmental staff and volunteers to express our...
Can I just stop for a minute?
Sorry. Oh, I forgot. Yes.
Staff and volunteers to express our...
Right.
Carry on.
Our sincere appreciation for their service and commitment to our city and urban areas. Rural region areas, rural areas.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I don't think it needs any discussion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Schofield. I think that's a great thing to do. And Councillor Quinton, you have a motion on notice or without notice?
Yes, please. My motion is that council begin preparation of a report identifying and assessing suitable locations within the City of Victor Harbor for the establishment of a public off-leash dog park.
Council begin preparation of a report identifying suitable locations
within the city
of Victor Harbor. Do you want to specify including beaches?
No.
No, within the City of Victor Harbor for an off-leash dog park.
For the establishment of a public off-leash dog park.
And that report come back within 3 months?
Ideally, well, because this is most likely going to be part of the draft dog and cat management plan. So I'd like it to coincide with next month's meeting if possible.
I think the staff are pretty busy at the moment. It might put them under pressure. I'll just ask Jody who's in Graham.
Yeah, through the mayor, certainly the intent is to bring the dog and cat management plan back to council at the July meeting, which will include some commentary around the feedback that we've received about an additional dog park and other off-leash opportunities. So that will find its place within the management plan that we'll be asking council to adopt. But for us to go through a process of investigation and preparing a report concurrently with that is a little bit tight for us. We'd need a bit more time to be able to do that.
Could I request a list instead of a full report?
That still will involve an investigation.
It's 4 weeks.
Sorry?
It's 4 weeks away.
Yeah, they're extremely busy at the moment.
I could do it in 10 minutes.
You know what council's like, dotting the I's and crossing the T's and doing due diligence.
Sorry, through the mayor, we'd be happy to receive any suggestions that you might like to look at a bit further. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And to be brought back to council at the earliest convenience.
Can you read the motion again, please?
The motion says the council prepare a report identifying and assessing suitable locations within the district for the establishment of an off-leash dog park, and that the report be presented to council at the earliest opportunity. Did you have, I'll just wait for this motion to.
Does this have a financial implication? Because sometimes we have things come up like this before and we have been told it has a financial implication.
It certainly has staffing implications because the staff have said that they are under quite a lot of pressure. Because of that, I'm reluctant to actually have this as a motion without notice, but I think that having a motion with notice would be a better thing if that came back at the next meeting. And I know that's not going to, you want it to be done now sooner rather than later, but I think that there are implications that we need to actually be aware of. So I'm going to decline that, Councillor Quinton, because of the implications on staff time at the moment. There are a lot of things going on with staff, and I just think that they need a little bit of extra leeway at the moment. Councillor Burns.
Thank you. I was going to second what Councillor Quinton said, but it should read second off-leash dog park because we've already got one.
Oh, I think that's just that little. Yeah. We'll realise that. But if the two of you want to get together and produce a motion on notice, then that will give staff some time to have some commentary around it. And if you want to include with yours the ideas that you might have, and even if you want to include some off-leash areas around the beach that you think might be appropriate, that would probably be good information to have with that. So we'll move on to confidential items. Thank you. This first item, when I first looked at it, I said to myself, why does this need to, well, I didn't say to myself, I said to Karen, why does this need to be in confidence? It's actually legislative requirement in relation to the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act that it needs to be in confidence. So the first recommendation is that the information to be received and discussed is relating to a proposal to prepare or amend a designated instrument under the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act. And so the council is satisfied that the meeting be conducted in confidence. Can move that way, Councillor Burns, and seconding that, please, Councillor Schofield. All those in favour? Those against? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. If you want to take 5 minutes and have a refreshment break while Lance is packing up, then that would be great. And then we'll come back at 1:45.